My name is Khyatt, and in December of 2023, I scored a 99.1 percentile on CAT, and I got calls from most top IIMs and B schools of India. After which, I decided not to sit for the interviews and not do an MBA in favor of building my own thing. And I've had a lot of people ask me why I took that decision or how it played out for me and what I'm doing now. So I decided to make a video about this. I'm going to talk about a lot of the decisions that I've made along the way, how all of them played out, how I dealt with all of it, and finally what I'm doing currently. So all of this started when I was in school. When I was in 8th grade, I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. I was generally speaking introverted. I did not have a lot of friends, but I loved reading and I was great at academics. So I read this book that completely shifted my life. It's like it gave me a different kind of clarity with regard to what I wanted to do in my life. So up until the time I read that book, I wanted to become a musician, or I wanted to become a cricketer because I played cricket professionally, or I would become a pilot. So I didn't really have any clarity. I was doing a lot of stuff back then. But once I read that book, I had complete clarity on what I wanted to do. And that book was Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, who is the founder of Nike. He talks about his journey building Nike from the ground up, coming up with the idea of building running shoes for athletes, and then building it up to a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. And after I read that book, I was convinced that all I wanted to do in my life was become an entrepreneur, build businesses, and basically do what he spoke about in the book, right? And it had captured my imagination in a way that nothing else could. And that really set the stage for all of my decisions to come. So after reading that book, all I did was try different things, try to build a bunch of businesses and fail, right? So from when I was in school till the time that I appeared for CAT, I tried a bunch of different things in school, in college. My first big love in life was cricket. I wanted to become a cricketer and I tried really, really hard to become a professional cricketer, but I was just not up there when it came to the skill. It's an extremely competitive sport and I was just not good enough. And so I could not become a professional cricketer. Along with cricket, I tried my hand at a bunch of different stuff. I started a podcast in 2019 or 2020. The podcast failed. It did not do well. It did not get a lot of listens. I learned how to trade, and in the process, I lost a bunch of my own money, of my parents' money, and it ended up being a complete failure. I tried my hand at sports cards, and the first month or 2 months of doing sports cards, I got scammed for like 4 or 5 lakh rupees. And once again, I lost a bunch of my money and my parents' money. So pretty much till the time I appeared for CAT, everything that I tried would fail, and I would fail miserably at it. And so at one point, my parents said to me, "We really think you should do an MBA." And I did not want to do an MBA. All I wanted to do was build a real business, but I clearly did not have any success doing that up until then. And so I decided to appear for CAT. Now, I appeared for CAT. I scored really well. I scored 99.1. I got calls from a lot of IIMs. But along with that, what I had also started to do was I had started to pitch local businesses asking to do their social media for them. So I went out with a friend and we started door knocking on local businesses, and we would say, "Hey, we can do your social media for you for XYZ amount," right? And it was very low. It was 10,000, 15,000 rupees, like 100, 150, $200. And we pitched that, and we did that till we had 3 clients basically. And bear in mind that I had no marketing skills at this point. I did not know how to sell. I did not know how to market. I did not know how to create content or do social media. But I decided to pitch first, get clients, and then figure out the delivery later, which is exactly what I did. And so through this door knocking process, going to businesses, knocking, getting rejected, we ended up getting 3 clients who paid us some amount of money to do their social media for them. So by January of 2024, by the time the IIM and B school calls had started to come out, I was doing around 50,000 rupees in monthly recurring revenue, which is not a lot of money, but it's not nothing either. And I started to see some traction finally. So I sat my parents down and I had a rational conversation with them saying, "This is what I want to do." And the implicit understanding was, if this fails, I can always go back and do an MBA. But if this works out, then I get to do what I've always wanted to do. And so they were pretty fine with that idea, and they allowed me to not do an MBA, basically not sit for the interviews, and instead continue to do what I was doing, which is pitch social media, content, advertising, and marketing to local businesses. And so I continued to work on that business. I figured out service delivery. I started hiring interns from my college, and I used to pay them a small stipend, get work done, get graphics designed, get videos edited, and I would post on these businesses' social media handles, and I started to scale my business from there basically. Now, this business at its peak was doing around 2.5 lakhs, maybe 3 lakhs in revenue, which was a decent amount of money for a 21, 22-year-old in business. But at the same time, I was also paying a bunch of employees. So by this time, I had hired a bunch of employees. I was paying them a good amount of money, and so my margins weren't massive by any stretch. But I finally started to see traction with business. I was finally starting to figure this out. I understood how marketing worked. I understood how advertising worked, how content worked, how I needed to pitch to clients, how sales worked. So I started to sell people on services. I learned how to upsell people whom I already had on my roster, and I started to pick up all of these skills in the process that would end up being incredibly beneficial for my overall journey. But in late 2024, suddenly things started to collapse, and I started to lose clients left, right, and center because I had no idea how to build systems. And so as soon as I started to get 7, 8, 10 clients at once, I had no clue how to handle so many people together, and things started to fail. Clients started to become unhappy, they started dropping out. And this, coupled with a general tendency of Indian clients to pay less, pay little, and at the same time not be very professional and mindful. So I was having instances where clients would call me at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m., and I would be constantly under a lot of stress and pressure, and invoices would be delayed, and money would not hit my account, or people would just ghost me all of a sudden. And it was just an incredibly stressful experience, and I could see everything that I had built crumbling in front of my eyes. And this continued into 2025, February, March, April, and there was a point when everything came to zero and I was paying my employees out of my own pocket. And around March or April of 2025, I finally sat down and I thought to myself, this is not working out. This is not turning out the way I wanted it to. I'm clearly failing at this. I cannot continue to bleed money. I need to do something about this. And so in April of 2025, I took the very difficult decision to shut my content company down. Now, this was one of the hardest, one of the lowest periods of my life by far, because this was the first time that I saw something that got a little bit of traction. This was the first time I started making real money in my life, and I saw it all come down right in front of my eyes. And I was completely devastated. Calling up my employees who had been working with me for 7, 8, 10 months, even a year now, and telling them that I could no longer pay their salaries was one of the toughest things that I've done in my life. And watching all of this play out was an incredibly painful experience for me. But looking back, I'm glad that it happened, because I also know that this process taught me a lot and it made me the person that I am today. So in April 25, I shut all of it down and I said, I can't be running this any longer. And then I decided, I was extremely stressed the last few months. There was a lot of pressure. I was feeling very low about all of this. So I decided to take some time away, and I planned a trip to Abu Dhabi to watch Hans Zimmer, who's one of my favorite artists of all time. I booked tickets for my brother and I to fly to Abu Dhabi and watch him live. So the day before I went on that trip, I packed this book called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. It was lying on my shelf for a bit and I'd never really taken the time to read it, but I said, why not give it a go? And so I was reading that book on my flight to Dubai. I was reading it once I landed there. And I can tell you confidently there are few books that have changed the trajectory of my life completely. Shoe Dog was one of them, probably the first book. The second one, if I had to name one, would be The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. I mean, the stuff that he talks about on there completely blew me away. This is an understatement if I say it changed my life, right? And here's why I say this. He talks about a lot in that book about intention, about the energy that you put out there, right? And again, there's people who believe in this, there's people who don't believe in this, but he talks about how when you put out the right intention, right, and you start to notice all of the things that are around you. He says inspiration is everywhere, right? Inspiration is in how the sun shines across your room when the curtains are open at a certain angle, or how a bird is singing its song in the morning, or how the leaf is falling slowly to the ground. There's inspiration everywhere. There's art everywhere. There's the substance of life is everywhere. All you need to do is you need to open your eyes and you need to notice. You need to notice the small things that are happening around you. You need to notice what is piquing your interest, what is piquing your curiosity, and basically that we are just vessels that the universe plays its song through, right? And that idea struck with me, the idea of effortless action, right? Or just the idea of effortlessness in general, where you don't try too hard, but you allow the world to do its thing. You just notice the stuff that happens around you with intention, right? And I started to do that as soon as I read it, right? And on the first day of my trip, I started to notice everything more intentionally, more actively. I started feeling everything a little more deeply, right? And the second or the third day on that trip, I was sitting at a cafe and it was completely empty, right? And there was this one guy who sits beside me. He's working on his laptop and I'm the only other person. My brother and I, we're the only three people in the cafe. And I noticed him because I had read in the book that you try to notice, right? And I see he's working on his laptop on a random Wednesday afternoon. And I was like, what gives this man the ability to be, and he was not a tourist, I could see he was a local. What gives this man the ability to sit on a Wednesday afternoon in a cafe and do his work, right? And so otherwise, I would not have done anything about it. I would have maybe scrolled my phone, had some coffee and got out. But it piqued my curiosity, and so I decided to act on it. And I went to him and I said, hey, can I have 5 minutes of your time? And he said, sure, what's up, have a seat. And I asked him what he did that allowed him to just sit here on a random weekday afternoon. And he started telling me about his business, which was basically he ran a recovery center in Dubai where people came and they recovered and they trained and stuff like that. And he was telling me about how he has several locations and he's opening more in Saudi Arabia and stuff like that. And it was really interesting stuff. And then he asked me what I did. And then I told him I used to run a content company that did social media for businesses. And then he asked me, do you guys do LinkedIn by any chance? And I said, yeah, we used to do LinkedIn. And he said, oh, I've been looking for a guy that does LinkedIn for so long now, but I've not found anyone. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, sure. Like, what have you got? What do you need help with? And then we set up a meeting at his office the next day. And this was a leisure trip. This was like a vacation for me. But we still set up a meeting at his office the next day. I went there the next day. We had a 3-hour conversation about what he wanted to do. We agreed on a deal. And by the time my flight came back, he had paid the invoice. And just like that, I had found a client out of nowhere. And mind you, this is a person who's paying me more than like 5 clients paid me at my Indian agency, right? And this was my first taste of earning money internationally and earning money in a stronger currency. And I highly recommend everyone, because once you taste a foreign currency, or once you taste earning money in a foreign currency, in a stronger currency, there's no going back from it. And so after that encounter happened and I came back to India, I said, you know what, like if this guy was looking for like LinkedIn experts and he didn't find any, maybe there's an opportunity in the market here, and maybe I could position myself as a LinkedIn expert and start doing this and start writing for a living, right? And so I built out an Upwork profile and I started pitching to foreign clients. I started pitching my LinkedIn services, and I managed to get another client from Upwork for LinkedIn ghostwriting services as well, who was paying me again a pretty decent amount on a monthly basis. And I said, yeah, this works. Let's start to do more of this. Let's start marketing this a little more aggressively, and I could build a real business around this, right? Which is when I found one of my older Upwork profiles on the same account. This was for a software called Go High Level. And Go High Level, if you guys don't know, it's a CRM that a lot of small to medium businesses use in the US. And I knew how to use that software because I'd spent a bunch of time in my experimental days in college trying to figure that software out. And I learned a bunch of stuff and tried to pitch services, but not gotten any response. And so I ran a quick experiment basically where I said, you know what, like I have this old Go High Level account as well. Let's see how many people need Go High Level services on Upwork, right? And so for LinkedIn ghostwriting, there would be, let's say, maybe 3 to 5 job posts every single day. When I searched for Go High Level, I saw a bare minimum, and this was like 11 or 12 p.m., 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. I saw around 25 job posts in that one day for Go High Level services, and that blew me away. I was like, okay, if there's just 3 to 5 job posts for LinkedIn and I still got one, and if there's 25 to 30, let's call it 50, right? If there's 50 people looking for Go High Level services, then this is clearly more demand than I had for LinkedIn services, right? And I said, okay, how many people are applying to these posts? And the number was pretty small. It was 10 people, 15 people, 20 people. I can stand out very easily in 10, 15, 20 people. And so I said, okay, let's continue applying to LinkedIn job posts, but let's also start applying to Go High Level job posts. And I started doing that, and I got a random gig at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. for a quick Go High Level account setup, and he paid me like $100 for it. And I did that gig, and then the same guy gave me more work like 3-4 days later for $200, and I was thrilled, right? This was my dream, is like sit on a laptop, not having to go to physical meetings, not having to deal with sending invoices and not getting paid. I'm like, I can do this and make the amount of money that I was making 6 months ago, but from my bedroom instead, right? And at my own time, with freedom, complete freedom of what I wanted to do. So I said, let's do more of this, right? And I started applying to a bunch of Upwork job posts for Go High Level for LinkedIn. But here's really where I started to see a lot of traction with Go High Level, because I realized that this is a new software which a lot of businesses are starting to implement, but it also has a steep learning curve, so most businesses don't quite know how to set it up properly. And so I found a couple of partnerships on Upwork with other agencies that were providing the service, and so I tied up with them and I started to do the delivery. So they would book the sales calls and we would get on a call, I would do the delivery, and I would close the client, and I'd make a pretty large percentage of the deal. And I continued this to a point where I started to make $10,000 a month, $15,000 a month from providing these services, right? And this happened between May 2025 to, let's say, July, August. So in those 3 months, I completely shifted my life. Everything changed for me, right? So now I run this company called Caveman Tech. We do AI and automations, and we help service businesses implement AI into their workflows, into their processes. We still do some Go High Level build outs and workflows, and we build websites every now and then, but we are primarily AI and tech partners for service businesses in the US, in Canada, and in the UK. So I basically have 3 big lessons from this. So for everyone asking firstly how that decision of not doing an MBA panned out for me, I would say it panned out okay. But even beyond that, here are maybe the 3 biggest learnings that I have, the key takeaways that you can adopt and implement from this video and from my story and from my journey. The first one is never stop believing in yourself. I have failed so many times that I have lost count, right? Most of the stuff that I've tried, and you know from the story now, most of the stuff that I tried failed miserably. Things did not work out, right? I lost money, I got scammed, nothing would work out. But the important part throughout all of this is I never lost belief. I always believed in my ability to make things work, and there was not one moment in this journey where I had doubts about what decisions that I made, or I had doubts about whether I would make it or not. I always knew that things would work out. It was only a matter of when. And there's this dialogue in the movie Marty Supreme that I really love, that a lady asks him, what are you going to do if this whole table tennis thing doesn't work out? And he replies, that doesn't even enter my consciousness. And that is the attitude that I carried basically throughout, and that is the attitude that you need to carry. You need to have an insane amount and level of self-belief in yourself, in your abilities, that you can make things work. The second thing is patience, is that things are not always going to work out in your time frames, right? Maybe it worked out at a certain point for me, or maybe it works out at a different point in time for you. But this is not a game of who wins first. This is a game of who hangs in longer. If you hang in there, if you don't quit, if you can take failure after failure, defeat after defeat, and not give up, then you will win. There's no other option, right? Which means your goal needs to be, okay, how can I keep playing this game for the longest possible time for me to win, right? Be patient, keep trying, do not give up, and you will find a way. And the third and probably the most important lesson from all of this, and this ties back to the book that Rick Rubin wrote, The Creative Act, is intention. And I'm sure there's people who believe in this, I'm sure there's people who do not believe in this, but I have seen this play out with myself. Act with intention. And again, intention is the energy that you're giving out. The energy that you put out into the world ultimately comes back to you. if you act with intention, if you have a clear vision of what you want your life to be like, right? And you work towards that vision every single day, you work positively, you work with good energy, you're putting out good intention day after day after day. When good things happen, you work with intention. When bad things happen, you still work with intention, right? You continue doing that for long enough, I think you succeed. I used to carry this note in my wallet where I used to write down my revenue number, which at that time was 10 lakhs a month. I wanted to hit that goal, and I carried a small note in my wallet, and I would look at it every day and remind myself this is what I'm working towards. And I would look at it when I was making no money, I would look at it when I made 1 lakhs a month, and I would just look at it regardless. And that was the intention that I was working with every single day, and I ultimately hit that goal, right? And now I have a new goal, and I'm 100% certain that I'm going to hit that goal as well, because I work with intention towards it. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or in 3 months or in 3 years, but it will happen as long as I continue to work towards it with the right intention. So that is my story for you. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. But yeah, take those things away, keep working hard, remain patient and work with intention, and you should get everything that you want.